All right, good evening, everyone. We'd like to call the meeting to order for August 26, 2024. Welcome everyone back from our summer break. It's been a good summer, especially after our 150th and all of that. We've all had a long summer to recoup from that. And so we look forward to getting into our meetings again today. Hopefully we all know how to do this still. And we'll go from there. So we'll start tonight with a moment of reflection, and after that we'll get into the approval of the agendas. So we'll start with a moment of reflection. Moving on to the approval of the agendas, we have a consent agenda. Is anyone wishing to pull anything from the consent agenda? Otherwise, a motion to approve. Councillor Wolstenholme makes a motion to approve the consent agenda. We'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to a regular meeting agenda, we've been asked to add one in-camera land item. Besides that, I do not believe there's any changes to the agenda. If I can get a motion to approve the agenda with the one addition. Councillor Fox makes that motion. Call it to question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And we're going to start tonight also with for the good of council. Does anyone have something they wish to share for the whole of council? Councillor Henniger.
I just have a few items from the summer. So again, just thanking everybody for the 150th celebration, all the volunteers, business owners, you name it. It was just a jam-packed week of events. And yeah, it just showed our community very well. And a lot of people came in just to take in the activities. It was really, really awesome. And then I do want to thank obviously the town and our contractors that came in to do the walking path along the river. I hear about it every single day. I see wheelchair users, I see bikes down there. People are just so happy. And so it's really nice to see out everybody there. The big truck petting zoo was outstanding. So thank you to FCSS and everybody who put that together. And then just most recently this past weekend, the Pride event, it was very quiet and peaceful. And I'm very thankful that 2024 was a positive turn following last year's. So thank you for the community for being respectful and allowing diversity and inclusion events like Pride in our community.
All right, any other thoughts, comments? A few highlights from our summer is we did attend the powwow. That was July 20, I believe, in Standoff, and it went really well. We served close to 1,000 meals, breakfasts, so more than we had anticipated. I think it was the plates that we used to count. And then they also attended the Pincher Creek Parade last weekend. Not last weekend, the weekend before, but it was a good parade. A long one. What I found interesting, it went really slow. And I found in our parade a lot of times we're running always to keep up. But here it was almost like we were waiting for Jamit to come with the car because I was walking too fast. So it was like, it was kind of interesting. So yeah, I thought that was kind of a neat thing they did there. Anyone else have a comment? Yes. A highlight coming up, I believe that's September 5th, is the Taste of Fort Macleod. That is always an amazing event with a lot of participants. So council or anyone from the community has not bought their tickets yet, we'd encourage you to do so. And anything else coming up? I will be out of town starting Thursday till next Wednesday. So if anyone needs to get a hold of me, they'll have to get a hold of our deputy mayor. Councillor Henniger. Very good. If there's no other for the good of council comments, we'll move on to delegations for tonight, which we have one. And we want to welcome Sergeant Christian Lafleur again for a quarterly visit and look forward to hearing from you. So yes, the floor is yours and we look forward to some discussion.
This report covers from April 1st to June 30th of this year. I'm going to go over the detailed human resources, financial, and crime statistics. If you'd like me to jump ahead to some of the things, just let me know. As per the normal summer events, we do have series of fire throughout the province, Alberta and BC. So as a result of that, I have one member that just deployed today for the next week or so, and she's also scheduled to redeploy for a second deployment. Every detachment in the area has been asked or told to provide somebody. So the one member is my contribution for that. She's going to Jasper, and she should be back in probably 9 days. We've also been told that there's going to be a G7 meeting happening in the next year. The detachment has no involvement in that, but and I don't plan on releasing anyone to that, but things may change. Again, thank you for your support and engagement. As always, I'm a phone call away or anything if you have any concerns to discuss text messages. My door's always open and I'm always available. Is there any need to go through the community consultations or?
I think only if there's something you want to highlight or if council has a question, but I don't know that you need to know.
No, there's nothing. They're the typical meetings with the community members as well as other agencies that we're partnering with, for example, the sheriffs or the Nokowa Center in town, as well as we're having monthly discussions with the integrated 8th crime group in light of what's happening in Palestine, the latest bomb threats throughout Canada. We didn't have any here. We didn't really have any hate crime in Fort Macleod, but there's been bomb threats in Montreal, Toronto, and so forth. So part of those meetings is to keep me informed of what's going on and sharing whatever information we have here. As I said, it doesn't affect Fort Macleod at this point. So that'd be it for the bulk of it. I am planning probably in the next month or 2 months to have a town hall meeting to reassess the priorities for the upcoming year and what we need to adjust for the remainder of the year. So the mid period is basically when I like to do it normally. Jumping to the community priorities. First one being crime reduction. Again, we try to identify through the court any offender's condition that we can monitor. So it's always in flux. Some people come off conditions, some more people are coming back on conditions, the ones that we can enforce. So right now keeping in mind that that's like a couple of months ago now, at that time we had identified 2 new offenders. There was also what we call SORCA, sexual offenders that are moving into the area that are being monitored. They're not falling under this observation. We basically keep an eye on them and we report to the various channel if they're not offending, which at this point they're not. So, but we have seen an increase, if you want, in those types of offender moving into the community. One roundup target was met. We organized one as per the quarter, which on top of that, there's several targeted roundup that we did, like the people of interest more than others to us, if you want. we target those and go arrest them. So we had really good success on that one. Tip of the week continues to be popular. As much as possible, I try to identify every week something that concerns to the citizen, and I talk about it. Unfortunately, recurring is scams. Again, today somebody fell victim to, hey, Grandpa, I'm in jail, I need bail money. So even though we keep putting that in newspaper, some people must miss it, or the emotion gets the better of them. Fortunately, we're able to stop it in time, so no money was lost. Traffic safety being priority number 2, with the highways going through town. We've issued a total of 157 tickets in that quarter. 18 warnings, 1 defect notice. I don't count warnings, I don't count defect notice as part of our target enforcement. However, they're in there because we're not just hammering people with tickets. As well, these are written warnings. We do a lot of verbal warning and just education, if you want. So 84 of those 157 tickets were not counted as part of the quarter's target, but simple reason that they were part of joint operation with the sheriffs, or that monthly traffic enforcement overtime shift that I put on. So I set goals for the member that comes in, and I say, I'm going to pay you, for example, 10 hours of overtime, but I expect this number of tickets, this amount of revenues, half of it coming back to the town. That's been very successful, and I've also reinforced the partnerships with the roving traffic unit as well as with the sheriffs. One thing that changed in the last couple of months is that the sheriffs were instructed that unless they're specifically invited by an RCMP member of the detachment, they are not to do traffic enforcement in town. So I went ahead and I sent an email with a blanket invitation that they're always welcome in Fort Macleod, and I'm inviting them. So we'll see what that does. Of the 73 tickets issued by my members, 27 were for speeding offenses. We have a threshold of tickets, or speed, I should say, that we target. Let's just say that 150 is more common than we'd like to see. So some of these people were giving a nice piece of paper. 43 of those tickets were written in the town of Fort Macleod, and 30 of those were written on the highway, which counts for Willow Creek. Okay. We conducted 4 joint check stop operations, and that's in partnership with the sheriffs and with the traffic unit. Impaired driving, we got a few. We got a whole whack of people on warrants through those operations, and then vehicle documentation. A large number, I can't drive a day without seeing people with expired registration, not wearing seatbelt, and so on. So we've given a warning in the papers, and then we started enforcing it. As a result of these 2 initiatives, we got 18 impaired drivers off the road in the past quarter alone. And these numbers are getting bigger and bigger for some reason. People don't listen to that. Police community relations, police visibility being the 3rd priority. As I said, we didn't hold a town meeting in this past quarter because it was too early. But in the next quarter or so, we'll do one, the first of 2, to reevaluate what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. What we can improve, I should say. So the year targets for foot patrol has already been surpassed, and that was in the first quarter. Many residents have stopped by members and myself and telling them how nice it is to actually be approachable and have the members visible and patrolling. So that's good, especially with a nice summer. School visit targets is on track to be surpassed when the school resume. We have a new member. I'm gonna bring him to meet each member of the council as you become available. He's a member with some experience. He's got 8 years service. Comes from Onion Lake in Saskatchewan. A very good worker, very dedicated. So I'm extremely pleased to have him on board. So, continuing the school visit, it's forecasted the school visit will increase further now that we're back to full strength. We had issues with school presentation. We conducted way less than I would have liked. We only did 3. There was issues with what type of presentation they would like us to conduct. For example, the distracted driving was deemed to be too triggering for some of the schools, so we're trying to identify a presentation that is meets the need of both the police and the schools and the students. So we're going to work on that further in the next school year. I have 5 constable, 1 corporal, and myself in the detachment. Right now, at that time, we were short 1 that was on long-term sick leave. That member has now been back. That's the one that's deployed to Jasper right now. And I'm in full strength for the admin positions. So in that change, at that time there was 1 position with 2 officers assigned. It was just an overlap in the transfer of the off-going member and the one that was coming. So they were both at the detachment at the same time. And that's it.
So on these numbers, sorry, Sergeant, currently we have 7 established positions.
That's
and
correct.
They're all filled.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. Yeah.
And you're suggesting that we should be asking for 9.
2 more, yes.
Okay.
The stats are from our manpowers are based on 12 years ago. There's been an increase in obviously activity, and with the town of Fort Macleod looking at increasing the population, it also increased the needs for more police, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which should be reflected in the census as it's updated as well. Because we end up paying more as well, correct? Because the numbers are based on census numbers, correct? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Any comments, questions from council? Councilor Monteith.
Does Brockett being number 1 impact Fort Macleod? Does Brockett being number 1 and being busy impact how busy we are in Fort Macleod?
It does in a sense that a lot of, how can I put that? Brockett and Standoff are starting to do what they call ban cancel resolution, where they're sending people out of the reserve, like basically they're banning them from the reserve. So a lot of them are coming to Fort Macleod because in discussion with them, they're telling us that they don't feel safe in Lethbridge. The other aspect of that is it does impact Fort Macleod because they all come in here for the liquor store and various other stores and facilities in Fort Macleod. In a lot of cases, there'll be a lot of impaired drivers in between. So yeah, it does affect, their activities does affect us. We were engaged in a couple of drug operations where, without going too much in detail, living in Fort Macleod was supplying Brockett and vice versa. So we've conducted some operation. We had good success with the alert team out of Lethbridge, and some people were arrested. So yeah, it does impact us, definitely, yes.
Any other comments, questions? I was going to ask on the impaired numbers. You say the rate's going up. Is that due to more testing primarily? Because I think you're free to test anyone that's stopped, no matter what, for what reason they're being stopped for, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we're allowed now to. We're always allowed to stop vehicles to check on documents, and that was always a given. Now, the province has given authority for us to stop any vehicle and check for sobriety. So basically, and that's what we're doing now. We don't have to do it to every vehicle, I have a pattern, and I've told my members, like, you need to establish that pattern that if you have to go to court, you can say, well, I didn't pick on you, is you were number so and so, and I'm doing enforcement. Or today I'm stopping everybody and I'm asking for. So to answer your question, Mr. Mayor, yes, it does have an impact because before, when we were just criminal enforcement, we needed to have a suspicion to stop a vehicle, to build our grounds to make that demand. Now it's mandatory. So, and I know there was an incident with somebody misunderstood the mandatory and heard mandate, which resulted in them refusing to provide a breath sample and being charged with impaired driving. So, if you refuse, you're basically guilty.
Admitting guilt.
Exactly. So, and we explained that to that person, and we explained that to everyone. It's mandatory. It's not a discussion. If you refuse to provide the breath sample as requested, you will be charged.
Okay.
And we've had a series of serious accidents lately. One last weekend, one the week before, Tuesday, on the highway, right? So it does impact those numbers, unfortunately.
And those were both alcohol related?
Well, the one that happened near Cold Date, I'm not sure. I don't have the
Okay.
details on that, but the one that I went to Tuesday, absolutely. She ran a two-stop vehicle at speeds above 100.
Okay. And yeah, one other question I had is the community. Have you been having positive feedback from the community in reporting crime? Has that been going better, would you say? I'm just curious how the community is involving with the RCMP. So I think in the past there's been some hesitancy or whatever. I'm just wondering if there's been more, better rapport in the community with reporting activities and the response of the RCMP to that activity.
You mean the feedback we're getting from people as to our
Yes,
activities?
call-ins or people calling in, okay?
For the most part, yes, we're getting a lot of people that are calling a little late. As far as like, it would have been nice if you reported this maybe a few hours ago. It's hard to gauge though if our number of calling is increased or not. Like our number of files has been pretty steadily increasing. So in that sense, I would say yes. The people are calling more often. I've had I think 2 disgruntled people calling me to complain about something that they didn't think was all right,
Okay.
which comparing to other detachment is really good. But again, that's very subjective. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
Yeah, I think it's good because anything the town can do to help encourage people to call in rather than wait or tell everyone else and report it on Facebook before they phone the RCMP, for example, right? So that kind of communication I think is important.
We go through, well, we don't monitor Facebook, to be honest,
No.
but we do go on the town's Facebook page and the other group,
Yeah.
and lots of time there's people discussing things in there that we contact them saying maybe you should tell us about this,
Mm-hmm.
or in a lot of cases we already knew, so but it just reinforces what we knew.
Yeah.
I think the RCMP is looking at creating a Facebook page for us. I'm not a tech savvy person in that sense, so I'm gonna let them create one for us, and hopefully that will actually create more bonds with the community.
Yeah, I think it may, especially if you can tag the RCMP in certain comments or whatever. If someone sees something, then they can say, let's tag the RCMP in the comment. Or I don't think we want to directly go that direction, but people are doing it already, so we may as well try to leverage it, I would think. Okay. Any other comments, questions from council, administration? We had some discussion on Alberta municipalities, so we can get back to you with some comments on that. It doesn't seem like we have a big list of items to talk about besides capacity. CO Burdette.
I just wanted to comment on how I feel like the communication has been really good between the RCMP and the town. We've had a couple incidents, some alerts, and between the town and the RCMP, we're able to get those out quickly. And communication was really good on both parts, and so I think that's really benefiting the community. So,
Yeah.
good job, town. Good job, RCMP.
Yeah, you're talking the Voyant app, right? And just using that, that has an impact for sure. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming again. We appreciate the work you do. Pass it on to your members, and if there's anything we can do to help, let us know. All right. Thank you. All right. Moving on in our agenda to unfinished business, we have bylaw 1969, which is a Perkins Street Road, and we'll ask our planner Gavin Scott to introduce this to us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This evening, we are reviewing second and third reading for bylaw 1969 is a road closure. The process has been a lengthy one, as the initiation of this began in January, actually before that. Public hearing was held in February, and then from there, it goes up to the minister and has finally come back for your consideration. Recommendation this evening is that second and third reading be given to close the road to public travel and creating a title to the disposing of the following described highways subject to the rights of access granted by other legislation. Firstly, you have Plan 1327 JK and all that portion of Perkins Street and the corner cutoff forming part of Lot 17. Block 32, and plan undescribed, containing 0.441 hectares, and that's just over an acre. And secondly, legal description, Plan 8211014, corner cutoff at the intersection of Perkins and Manning Avenue, forming part of Lot 17, Block 32, and the plan numbers undescribed. And as well in your package, you can see the impacts of this road closure. It's all been listed by Kelly. I won't read that out in detail, but if you have questions, I am prepared to answer them.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone prepared to make a motion for second reading of bylaw 19, which was in 1969? Councillor Fox makes a motion. Any questions for administration regarding this proposed road closure bylaw? We've had a public hearing. We've had it advertised. I have not heard of any concerns, so if there's no other comments, we'll call the motion to question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Anyone prepared to make a motion for third reading of bylaw 1969? Councillor Fox makes the motion. If there's no further discussion, questions, we'll call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. So that's bylaw 1969 has been carried. Anything else on that, Kevin? Don't think so. Moving on then to bylaw 1984, which is rezoning residential and residential multi-units to, a few different items on this one. And we'll also ask our planner, Gavin Scott, to speak to this one.
Yes, this evening we have for your consideration bylaw 1984, land use bylaw amendment for first reading. And this is to designate lands legally described as Lot 6 and 7, Block 27, Plan 98-12195, and a portion of Block 16, Block 27, Plan 0012-12428, from residential to residential multi-unit. And there is also a portion of Lot 16, Block 27, Plan 00128, to be rezoned from residential to public institutional, and that is our Parks and Rec District. And to schedule the public hearing to be held on September 23rd, 2024 at 7 p.m. This property does include both a private and a public property. So the public property is to the west side of the two lots as described in the bylaw. And to the east, yes. Yes, the public is to the east
Yeah.
of the privately held lots. So there was an opportunity to zone what has always been zoned residential to its actual use as a park, that one portion there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, the bylaw has been presented. Anyone wishing to make a motion for first reading and the advertising of a public hearing for bylaw 1984? Councillor Wilson, who makes that motion? Any questions for administration? Councillor Monteith?
Who initiated the request for rezoning here?
It was initiated by the landowner in discussions with the town. So there has been, I guess there's ongoing history here, as you may be well aware. Many of those issues have been resolved. The zoning request for the multi-unit, though, was initiated by the private landowner.
Okay. And and in your opinion, rezoning to residential multi-unit is aligns with our land use plan and
Yeah, I think I'd defer that to our public hearing to give those comments.
sure, yeah, very good. Any other comments, questions? So I think the roadway was taken care of already, right? The one that's on the north side, the 001, that we did a few years back or something, correct?
That is still in the works, so this is part
okay.
of this solution.
So it's not part of this one, it's part of something
Roads
else?
don't normally get zoned, so, but it has not been registered. That's where we're working towards that.
Okay. All right, any other comments, questions? So from administration's perspective, there's no concerns with proceeding with this bylaw besides obviously the feedback.
Yeah, I mean, as first reading, right, like just getting it on the books, but yeah, this is as presented.
All right, motions on the floor. If there's no further discussion, debate, or questions, we'll call it to question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion for bylaw 1984, first reading and public hearing has been carried. Thank you, Mr. Scott. Moving on to item 2 under new business, we'll ask our Director of Community Services, Lisa Gillingham, to introduce this to us.
Thank you and good evening, Council. With fall comes the fall fundraisers that start to happen throughout town. The first request we've had for a fee waiver is coming from the Empress Theatre Society as well as the Public Library Society, and they would like to host an Oktoberfest fundraiser in October, and they are asking us to waive the rental of the community hall. Full day rental would be approximately $550 with the use of the kitchen. And typically that cost covers some utilities, some cleaning costs, and then a small portion of revenue goes back into the revenue for maintenance and such. We have typically waived fee rental costs for the community hall in the past for fundraiser events, so this is not an out of the ordinary request. And from administrative perspective, we support waiving the fee for this event.
Very good, thank you. Anyone prepared to make a motion as per the recommendation? Councillor Fox makes that motion. Any further discussion or debate? Seeing none, we'll call the motion to question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to item 3, terms of reference for the Inclusion and Diversity Committee, and we'll ask our Director of Community Services to speak to this one as well.
Thank you. So a couple of years ago, we had a fairly active inclusion and diversity committee. With COVID came some challenges for time. And then we did a little switch up in the FCSS office, and it kind of fell a little bit to the wayside. And we'd like to reintroduce the inclusion and diversity committee and strike that up again and hopefully get some new community involvement. So I have taken the old terms of reference that were drafted a few years ago, kind of bulked them up a little bit, added some meat and potatoes to them, so they say, and we'd like to also ask that council accepts community applications for this. That's part of the new terms of reference, is that the application process comes to council at the organizational meeting. And that way, because it is a committee of council, and that was determined a few years ago, but applications never came through that process, and we feel that this would be a great committee to add to that, and to let council oversee the applications of community members for that. The other part of this submission is if we would like to talk a little bit of budget for this committee. There are some grants and such that are available. However, for the first year that we're getting started, they wouldn't have access to those grants until the committee kind of was struck and was able to find those grants and to apply for them. So perhaps we can discuss a little bit during the budget year process coming up, that this be a new line item on the town budget to be able to put some funds aside for the 25 year. Happy to answer any questions.
Very good. So we have a recommendation from administration on this agenda item. Is anyone prepared to make a motion regarding the recommendation? Councillor Anninger makes the motion. to
And for the
approve
applications for the 2024 organizational meeting. Thank you.
as per the recommendation.
Yep.
Any further discussion? Councillor Monteith?
Composition of members, you talk about different groups and whatever, but, and I understand that, but what happens if we don't get applications from people of these groups? And what, and how are we determining who we would select? And I know this is all theoretical because who knows how many we'll get, but are we doing it based on membership in a group or based on the quality of the person?
I think it's fair to say that there's going to be a combination of reasons when reviewing applicants to sit on the committee and part of their applicant process, or if we have additional questions for them, it may be some of those questions would be asked why they feel they're suitable to sit on this committee, what they're going to bring positively to this the committee, and how they feel they can support the inclusion and diversity mandate, which is to increase that tolerance throughout the community. It's not just about recognizing it's not just about racism and everything. There's also accessibility issues, and all of those things are all part of this committee. And so I think that's a good way to strike up that conversation with people and to kind of have that conversation before they necessarily apply or are approved as applicants, and then that way they'll know what they're also getting into too, and they won't have their expectations kind of dwindled because they didn't think that that's what they were getting into. So I'm hoping that those conversations can happen even before they apply, and that they can be really clear. And then that's also, we have a great diverse council right now too, and so part of the reason that we want to bring those applications to council is so that they can participate in those conversations as well. And if they have any experiences that they want to share with those people, that's also part of the process.
Any other comments? Yeah, I think in the event that we have no applicants, I think it's going to come back to council. The council goes out and drums up interest for people to sit on said committee. And in the event there's too many applications, I think that's where council has a role to play in ensuring that the individuals that we appoint to sit on that committee will represent the goals of the committee and where it needs to go, right? So I look forward to some of that discussion. It's going to be hard. It's not an easy committee to sit on, but I think it's a good one to sit on in terms of keeping the communication open. And I hope people in the community actually see value in sitting down with their neighbors and working together on how to have good conversations. So hopefully we get some good applicants that want to help see your community strengthened and yeah, supported. Any other comments? Motion is on the floor. If there's no further comments, debate, or discussion, then I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on then to our Director of Finance, Chris Holbeck, would like to talk about our ATCO franchise.
Thank you, Mayor Fader. Good evening, Council. It is that time of year again. Normally in the fall, we receive some requests for franchise fee rate changes from our franchise holders for electrical and gas distribution within the municipal boundaries of the town of Fort Macleod. So first up this year is ATCO Gas requesting if we want any changes to our 12.5% franchise fee for gas distribution in the town of Fort Macleod. So Fortis's will be coming in the next month or so, I'm sure. So I put down the history, the details, kind of how this process works every year. I dug a little deeper this time because this one is a little bit different than normal. Normally, ATCO Gas would send us a letter and ask us if we want to change our franchise fee percentage. And I would come to council and request an answer, and you guys would give me an answer, and I just email them, and away we go. But this year it's a little bit different because the provincial government passed a new act. And I think we remember it from the summer, maybe. The city of Calgary, we're having all sorts of conversations about their NMAX and their distribution, the franchise fees that their population was paying, because their franchise fee wasn't just a percentage like ours is. It was based on the regulated rate option, so it fluctuated wildly, and it was kind of a hedge for the future for the city of Calgary, and everybody was up in arms about how they were calculating it. And so the province stepped in and had this Utilities Affordability Statutes Amendment Act, and it's been passed by the province. So instead of it just me emailing our franchisers and saying, okay, we're leaving our percentage at 12.5%, this one actually has to be approved by the AUC this time. So there's a little bit more administrative time lags and details that have to go into it. So we're starting a little bit early. I have fun. I wrote down some fun facts about the act and stuff, but you guys can Google that on your own if you're really interested in figuring out what that's about. So the recommendation tonight to council is that we would leave our gas distribution franchise fee at 12.5% for 2025. This calculation becomes part of our operating budget for 2025 under our franchise fee revenue. And we get that both from ATCO Gas and from Fortis Electric. So I don't know if anybody has questions, or maybe, yes, Jim.
I'm glad you asked for questions before we made the motion. One thing I learned when talking to a councillor from Pincher Creek is they maximize the franchise fee because in the way they look at it, organizations that don't pay property tax pay franchise fees. So if we increase the franchise fees, we're getting more money from organizations and government organizations specifically than we would if we leave it the same. So I propose that we up it to 20%. If we up it to 20%, we then don't have to raise taxes as much because we're getting more in franchise fees, but we're hitting on businesses and operations that don't pay property taxes. So in total, we would be better off.
Is that your motion or is that a discussion?
I am happy
point?
to make that motion.
I'm not sure how we even get to that conclusion because I know we can raise it to 20, but we also have to. Yeah, because I think in Pincher Creek, you using that example, if they're maxing out their franchise fees, they still have one of the higher mill rates as well. So in
But
the end,
that's a whole different issue. If we're raising another $100,000 from our franchise fees, it means we need 100,000 less from property taxes.
yeah, I'm just saying, why would Pincher Creek have high on both? Because that's a pretty poor argument that they're saying they maximize their franchise but still have high mill rates.
All they're really saying is they're getting money from organizations that they don't get property taxes for.
So
So it's better for the residents.
it's technically another tax.
It's a tax on organizations that don't pay property tax.
Which are a lot of nonprofits potentially as well.
Mostly, I think it's government. School district,
Hospitals.
yes.
Yeah, and you can't pick and choose what franchise fees goes on which properties. And so I don't know how to have that discussion. Like we can ask administration to do a little bit of scenarios perhaps, but in the end it's been 12 and a half for as long as I can remember. It doesn't mean that that's right. I know Councillor Monteith, you've brought it up on occasion in the past, suggesting that we should have a higher franchise fee. I think I'm fine with that as long as there's a commitment from our side that we're not double dipping and doing both.
Well, we've never double dipped when we come up with our budget, right? We come up with a budget, we come up with our revenues, and then we set the property tax for what the deficiency is. So if we've got an extra $100,000 in franchise fees, that's $100,000 we need less to raise from property taxes.
Yeah, as long as that's the case, because a lot of times it's like, oh, we have extra, then let's. So it's easy to almost ignore that franchise fee because it's hidden in a number somewhere. We're not dealing with it when we're setting our mill rates.
We are because it's in the budget,
Yeah.
because we part of the budget process is Chris lays out how much she's expecting from franchise fees, how much she's expecting from this. Then we look at the total expenses and then the difference is what we have to raise for property taxes. So if we've got more revenue from franchise fees, we need less from property taxes.
So you would support a decrease to mill rates?
That's a general question. You have to wait till you're doing your budget to determine what you need for mill rate and whatever. I mean, it's possible that mill rates could go up, but that's not because we've charging more franchise fees. That's just because you have more programs or whatever. But that's all part of the budget process.
Right. As long as these two are directly connected, a lot of times they're separate.
Well,
Because
they're all
done
part
at-
of the revenue of the town, so they're not separate.
But they're decided at different times. One's 6 months ahead of the other one, so it's almost like if we're deciding on it at the same time, that's one thing. So I can see us setting mill rates. If we do it both at the same time, that's one thing, but we're setting it now and then setting mill rates 3 months or 8 months later. Like to me, if we want to set our mill rates, let's have this discussion next April when we're doing our mill rate discussion for the following year.
I'm having trouble understanding the logic of that, because to me, it's quite simple. If you have $100,000 more in franchise fees, you need $100,000 less in property taxes. Doesn't matter when you do your budget.
Yeah, yeah, in my mind, it does, because it's almost like yeah. There's been a hesitancy on council to reduce mill rates. So it's like it's always got to go up is the language that we're using, but when it comes to this, we got to go up, but still go up on mill rates.
The hesitancy to decrease mill rates is a result of the budget, the expenses. It's not a result of where we think mill rate should be. This is what the budget is for expenses. This is the revenue we have. This is how much property tax we need. Like in my mind, it's quite simple.
Yeah. Thoughts from Theo Burdette? How would you consider that we should be discussing this? Obviously, council can make a motion one way or the other.
Yeah, when it comes to kind of the financial picture, I can see kind of where, well, from my perspective of where the discussion is. If the increase in franchise fees were to occur, it will increase the revenues. And I think the way that we set the budget, because we start with expenses, right? We start with the need, we start with what we spent last year, and we try to establish that first. And then depending on that, that's where the mill rate gets adjusted. And if there's any big changes, from my experience with setting the budget, we make some changes there. And so one way or another, as far as, I'm not going to try to sway either way, but I think as far as determining whether or not this needs to be set or increased, I think, to determine whether or not the franchise fee needs to be established or changed now that's the timing of that fee and any change in that percentage rate. And I can recognize why you might want to keep it all bundled together because we don't pass the budget until the spring. I think that the rest of council, I don't know if the rest of council will be ready to increase the percentage of the franchise fee without a little bit more additional information, or even knowing what 20% means to the town. I think with a bit of additional information, I think that would probably help the rest of council to be ready to choose one way or another. Chris, do we have a deadline as far as what's the timeline to submit this?
I would have to bring it back to probably the next council meeting and get a decision.
Yeah, because I think at 20%, change of 20%, we'd like to know what that means to the end user. Because, that's not a small increase. But what does it mean to the monthly utility bill that residents are getting?
And I think residents would appreciate us knowing that information when the decision is made. And so I think that it wouldn't be out of our ability to come back with how much total revenue we're looking at by that sort of increase and what that would look like for the average household based on usage. Chris, that seems manageable.
The only thing that I found over the years, having these conversations with our franchise owners, is they don't know when somebody's renting a building. They don't know if there's an owner and a renter, usually. Maybe they have that information at their fingertips. I don't know if they do. They normally just have a customer. Not like us. We know if you're renting a building or if you own a building because we have the property tax information at the ready. So that's the only thing I can see, maybe slowing this down. Or not getting us good information. That's.
Even if we were to take a sample of you end users, or even if you were to take we establish an average household, something like that, where maybe we don't need all the information, but we just pluck one or two that we know, hey, this is an average size home in our average size community, and we can take their usage. But we have to request that from Fortis, essentially, right?
Direct energy from the franchisor, whatever it's called. And I'm thinking businesses too, not just residential, commercial, industrial.
Yeah, so it's not quite as simple as that, but we can find out a little bit more information so that we can come back and make an informed decision.
Yeah, I think when we do the mill rates, I'm thinking we have the spreadsheet up on the screen. We're going through the numbers. I think at minimum, we need to add the franchise fee adjuster and percentage to that. So when we're next year deciding on mill rates, we can play with the numbers a little bit so that we can make an informed decision for what we'd like to see for the year following.
I agree. I think this would have to be a conversation for the next year's budget at this point. Really. I'm just worried that I'm just going to hammer through this and not have good information. Sorry.
Okay, so discussion's been had. Councillor Monteith, would it make sense then to add some more of this variable to our mill rate discussion so at least we have that very visible. We're not forgetting about it. We can adjust the franchise fees on both ACO and on Fortis to be able to understand what that impact could be so that we can adjust our mill rates accordingly, or at least set a longer term plan as to how we want them to go. Because it will take some communication to the community too. We don't want to do this without actually having a plan in place, because that it'll come across as just another tax grab.
They do, I think the average customer sees that local access fee on their bill and they don't understand it at all. And this would give me time to kind of perfect a spreadsheet so that the calculations flow through, and I'm confident in what I'm presenting to council for budget purposes.
Does that make sense to you, Councillor Monteith?
That's fine. I just wonder if you're going to have the information from public institutions that aren't paying property taxes, how much are they paying in franchise fees to know how much more money we're generating by charging them more?
Chris, do they provide us, like if we were to say, hey, we're looking at increasing it, do they provide us with an estimate on how much that would be? Like, do we know that?
They normally will send us a spreadsheet where you can play with the percentage, but it breaks it down into customers. So it's small business, larger business, residential. I don't think I've ever seen it broken out into like public institutional or hospitals, schools, that kind of thing.
Great. So we had some good discussion. Either way, I think we want to not drop the discussion, but allow for some more discussion on what franchise fees should be moving forward. Anyone prepared to make a motion on this agenda item? Sorry. Yes, we do. Who had made the motion, sorry? See? No, I don't think we made. Okay, so your motion stands. You want to leave on the floor a motion to increase, or are you changing it as per the recommendation?
I'm willing to listen to administration, but I would like, I'm willing to defer it. I think it's costing our taxpayers money, but if they would like to defer it to have more information, I'm fine with that.
Okay. So you're okay with the motion being as per the recommendation for now, and then we can make sure we keep on the discussion item how to include franchise fee discussions in our mill rates and deliberations. Does that work?
That's fine.
Okay. Everyone's clear on the motion? Councillor Monteith made the motion. All right, if we're good on that, so I'll call the motion to question. On favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on then to Alberta Development Officers Week 2024, and we'd like to ask our Director of Operations to speak to this one.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's that time of the year when we ask that Council proclaim the week of September 22nd, 2024 to September 28th, 2024 to be designated as Alberta Development Officers Week in the town of Fort Macleod. The Alberta Development Officers Week helps us to publicly recognize the work of our municipal employees in planning and development for the improvement of the town of Fort Macleod. I want to give a shout out to Kelly Sanford for all the good work she's been doing for the town of Fort Macleod. And if you have questions, I'm available to answer your questions. Thank you.
Very good. Anyone prepared to make a motion based on the recommendation? Councillor Henniger makes the motion. Any further discussion? I believe that same week is Alberta Municipalities Convention, right? So it'd be interesting to see if they do anything at the convention for that. If not, no discussion or questions, we'll call the question on favor. Any opposed? Motion is carried. All right, moving on then to parade invitation. This is an FYI for the Cali Parade. If anyone is interested and able to go, we'd encourage you to speak to Miranda or Anthony and book the vehicles. Yeah, for sure.
Just curious, and Lisa and I talked about this briefly, and I'm not sure if the conversation happened while I was here or previous, whether or not we need to continue to bring the parade items to council meetings, or whether we just have a scheduling. I mean, any dollar amounts that would be spent for candy or whatever would just come out of council's budget for what's already allotted there. So because we're not increasing a budget amount, we could probably just start having an email with invitations. I mean, sometimes it's nice to get you all in the same room and like, you know, figure it out, but at the same time, it doesn't usually require a motion. So just if anyone has any strong feelings one way or another, administration would be okay with just hounding you via email or text.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to add it as a bit of a discussion in budgeting too, whether we want to actually do some kind of a designated vehicle float. I'm not sure, it doesn't have to look like much. I know at the Pinch Creek Parade, I seen Sparwood's vehicle and they had the pickup truck that they just built a platform that they could just lift onto the back. They had their big dump truck and it was just simple and clean and looked good, right? But it wasn't really exhaustive for nothing like Clarsome has, I think, a designated float, and I don't think we need to do anything that exhaustive, but
We should have a fort that sits in the back of a truck.
yeah. So, yeah, I personally don't think they need to come to council. If it's maybe even a calendar invite, and if no one accepts the invite, then I think it's pretty clear no one's going. Something like that, I don't know. So any other thoughts, questions? Otherwise, a motion to accept this information. Councillor Henniger makes a motion. We'll call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. No administrative reports. We will proceed to in camera. We have 6 items between intergovernmental, legal, personnel, and land sales. So, motion to go in camera for those 6 items. Councillor Fox makes a motion. Call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried.